President Biden will sign the Fiscal Responsibility Act into law Saturday. He addressed the nation Friday night to mark the passage of the bill, which will suspend the country's debt limit. Mr. Biden spent weeks negotiating with Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on a deal that will prevent the U.S. from defaulting on its debts, which the Treasury Secretary said would happen as early as Monday. The president used what his aides describe as his first Oval Office address to applaud Congress for getting the measure passed.
That's why I'm speaking to you tonight, to report on the crisis averted and what we're doing to protect America's future. Passing this budget agreement was critical. The stakes could not have been higher.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins us now. So, Nancy, these negotiations appeared stalled at several points. How did the final deal get to the president's desk?
Well, because there was a sword hanging over all of it. And, even though there were some dramatic moments, even though there were points at which Republicans signaled that they might walk away from the talks, the reality is that both sides knew that they had to get this done, and they knew when they had to get it done, because the X date that the Treasury Secretary set, the date when she said that the U.S. would officially run out of the funds it needs to pay its bills, driving the U.S. into its first ever debt default. She said that that would be this coming Monday, June 5th. And so it was really a pencils down moment earlier this week when Republicans and Democrats knew they needed time to get this deal, to explain the deal, to put it into legislative language, to get it passed in the House and Senate with no bumps in the road, no changes made by any member of Congress that could then throw the whole thing into disarray and get it to the president's desk, where he is going to sign it on Saturday. At that point, just 2 days away from the X date, Catherine.
We heard a little bit from the president about the concessions, but what would you say was the biggest concession that he had to make?
Well, the biggest concession, without doubt, was on spending. Democrats would have liked to see an increase in spending, particularly domestic spending, over the next couple of years, especially because of the inflation rates that we're looking at right now. I mean, when you hold spending steady, which is essentially what is going to happen over the next couple of years when it comes to domestic spending, you have to remember that if inflation is at 4 or 5%, that really represents a cut in real dollars to spending. But that was a concession that they made. Republicans wanted far deeper cuts. They wanted cuts that, according to independent analyses, would have resulted in a 20 to 30% cut over time to domestic spending. So at the end of the day, White House officials say that they believe that they wrangled the best deal that they could. They were never going to be able to tout major things that they got out of this deal, because what they were simply trying to do was prevent a default. But they do feel that when it comes to some of the changes that were made to eligibility for SNAP, for food stamps, for welfare, they think they actually may have come out a little ahead. So definitely the sense that we've gotten from some, not all Democrats by any means, is that this could have been far worse.
So what was the big win for the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy?
I think the biggest win was that he was able to keep his party, by and large, together throughout all of this. Remember, what gave him the leverage in the first place to have this negotiation with President Biden was the fact that he kept almost everyone in his party together to pass a bill that would have imposed really, really steep spending cuts. And would have also, at the same time, raised the debt ceiling. And he was able to go to the president and say, well, here's what we want to do. What are you going to do? You don't have the votes on your own to do anything unless you talk to Republicans. And then not only that, Catherine, but Republicans, by and large, stuck with him throughout those negotiations, even when it became clear that they were not going to be getting anywhere close to what they had set out as their starting point for negotiations. And a lot of them ended up voting for the bill at the end. That may sound pretty basic, that party members would stick with their party leader in tough negotiations, but we've seen it go the other way for many Republican speakers just over the past decade. And because some of the members on their right flank peeled away and said, we're not going to support you, the leader ended up losing his leverage and ended up having to give more to Democrats. So it is notable that in his sort of first major foray as Speaker into negotiations with this president, he had the clout of almost his entire party behind him, even if some of them didn't vote for the final product.
Nancy Cordes at the White House, thank you for your reporting.
You're welcome.